Well, Gabe, you just gave your candidating sermon. Can you just tell me about the whole entire process of what it takes to be a candidate, pastoral candidate at a church?
Yeah, I guess for those who don't know, candidating is a regular process that pastors do, or I guess seminary grads do to become a pastor of a church, because candidating is about the church wanting the pastor to be their shepherd. And so at FCBC, the process is pretty much an interview process with interviews with the pastors as well as the deacons, getting that approved, and then from there we go to the candidating sermon, which I preached 2 Sundays ago. The next step from that is a meet and greet, where the church gets to, I guess, interview and get to know me and my wife Sharon. And then after that, it's pretty much a vote, I believe. So that's the process.
So it seems like it's going pretty fast. I wanted to talk to you today specifically about that sermon. Do you still, is it too far ago, like more than a week ago, or do you still remember it?
No, I remember it. It's pretty fresh.
Okay, so I want to ask you, how did you feel immediately before giving it? How did you feel while you were giving it? And then how did you feel immediately after giving it?
Well, prepping up to that message, so I decided to just preach, the next passage in our series through First Corinthians. So I didn't choose like a pet passage that I was really familiar with or anything. And it so happened that the topic landed on like sex, marriage, and divorce.
Right.
So I guess I was just a little bit nervous about addressing those topics because I'm addressing them to English adults,
right,
and to families, and it's not like I've been married for that long. So it was just an interesting topic to talk about. But I really enjoyed the process of just studying the text and really preparing myself. So I don't know. I guess I was just trying to tell myself before the sermon that this is just a sermon. Like, don't think about the candidating part. Don't think about, think about who I'm preaching to, but think about it in a way that it's just a sermon. Not that I'm trying to gain their votes or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah. And during the sermon, usually when I start preaching, it's the initial like 2 minutes that's a little bit more nervous, and after that, I'm pretty much good. Like I'm just in it, and I'm not thinking that much.
Oh, okay.
So I'll say during the sermon, I wasn't really thinking too much or like aware of what's going on. I did lose a little bit track of time, so I when I noticed I was getting a little bit late, I started cutting out some stuff from my manuscript, and then and then after the sermon, it was I don't know. I guess it was just good to be able to preach. I think it was good to preach in person again because I've been doing most of my sermons on Zoom for the past year, and so it's good to be able to see people and hear reactions right away. And I think that was just helpful. That made me feel like I was there. I didn't get too much of a chance to really process what happened after the sermon because I was just kind of greeting people afterwards, and my parents were there too listening. So I made sure to go greet them and some other friends as well. So yeah, it's been a rush. I'll say that.
So you mentioned that like you just try to treat it like any other sermon, but you know that it wasn't any other sermon. Did you spend more time preparing on this than you would a normal sermon? Were you like more cognizant of, okay, I'm going to stick to my manuscript, I'm not going to try to add anything, or were you practicing your hand gestures? Like, there's got to be some things that were a little bit different.
Honestly, I didn't really prepare any differently. Because I was so busy doing other sermons and other Bible studies that I pretty much prepped the week of, which is normally what I do with sermons. So I didn't spend any extra time on it. I was thinking to myself, because I usually go long, and you see my IT sermons are like long.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so I was cognizant about how many pages I had. So I was trying to make sure I cut things away and just try to stay on my manuscript. So that a lot of my focus was there to make sure I didn't go long.
Right.
But everything else was pretty much the same.
So somewhere in your on your hard drive, or I guess there's a longer version of that sermon somewhere, right? Because you said you cut it out.
Yeah, there's slightly longer, not too much.
What do you wish went differently, if anything at all? Or actually, let's back up. What do you think went well? You can talk about
Mhm.
anything that you thought went well, and what do you wish you did differently?
Um, I think it went well in the sense that it was a sunny day. Everyone was there, and I was able just to. I felt like peace with the sermons. I just feel like I did my work. I did my work with the text. I knew the text. I knew what I wanted to say. And I knew where I was going with the sermon. So it didn't. It felt like a good structure in sermons. I was pretty comfortable with it. What I wish what didn't go as planned was I've been preaching off my iPad. I've never preached outdoors on my iPad, and there's this glare that came in when the clouds weren't there, and so I was like, I couldn't see my manuscript for a little bit here and there.
So were you going off your memory at that point, or did you like try to shade it, or
No, yeah, I was like shifting my manuscript, my iPad up the pulpit so I could get some of the shade covering so I could see better. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I need to. If I were to preach outdoors again like that, I need to keep in mind of the sun.
Well, I mean, to be fair, yeah, this isn't necessarily the most ideal situation for your candidating sermon. Like you said, you've been on Zoom for IT and Turf. And if it was, non-COVID times, you'd be in the Mac, I'm assuming, like in an air-conditioned environment.
Right.
Yeah, how did it feel just preaching outdoors? Did you find that like a little bit special? Did you enjoy it? Did you feel like there was a lot of space between you and the congregation? Because when I'm leading music, I do feel like the spatial difference. It's hard to get a read on people. You feel a little isolated. How did you feel?
Honestly, it's better than preaching on Zoom. So I guess because I've been doing that for the past year, like I was like, oh man, it's nice to actually look around and see people's faces, see people taking notes, and even hearing reactions. Like if I were to say a random joke, that I just like I don't get that when I'm preaching Zoom. And when I'm preaching Zoom, I'm sometimes just very aware of my own voice. This time I wasn't. It just felt more natural. And yeah, I think that outdoors is not ideal. The wind did kind of come in and start blowing my Bible pages around. So I had to take out my cell phone just to like keep it down, get some paperweight in there. So there's like little nuances here and there that I had to figure out how to do better, if I were to preach outdoors again. But overall, I think it went pretty well. I felt like the AV team did well, just, setting up, making sure we had mics up and I was able to hear myself pretty well. And I guess the other thing is I keep forgetting there's a camera on me. So I have to like remind myself to look at the camera. So I'm speaking to the online community
that's
as well.
Good, that's good. Yeah. Well, to be fair and to, I guess to affirm you, I listened to almost all of your IT sermons, almost all of your Turf sermons when we put them online. And this felt like it was still you. Like it didn't feel like, oh, this is a different version of Gabe. It did feel like, I guess what you said, right? Like a little bit shorter than your Turf and IT sermons. But I think it was a good thing. I think it was still focused and still clear. So thanks for preaching. I did want to ask you though, how should the church, or I guess Christians, be thinking about guest speakers? Now, I know you're not a guest speaker, but how should we think about, preachers who aren't necessarily the normal preaching pastor? Like, should I get hyped because there's somebody else preaching? Like, what's your take on this? You can talk to different contexts. You can talk about somebody like you that's candidating, or you can talk about like a true guest speaker that's coming from outside. How should we think through this?
That's interesting because Nine Marks just talked about this on their Preacher's Talk.
I saw that. Yeah.
I didn't listen to that whole thing yet. I kind of caught bits and pieces here and there. And I think guest preaching is I think what I guess something you have to realize with preaching is that a lot of it is the pastor knowing the flock, right? And knowing the context, knowing what struggles people are in. They might not know everyone in the congregation if it's a bigger church, but they know like, little groups here and there and just what they're going through. And I think for a guest preacher, that's probably the hardest thing is that connection. And you're aware of that. Like if at least a preacher who's aware of who they're preaching to, they're aware that there's this disconnect, and that makes things hard. They try to generalize things, or they try to like say things that, or they just simply stick to the text because they don't want to misapply things to people who are not in the right context. And so I think that part gets a little bit more difficult. I think for congregations, I think it's okay to get excited for a guest preacher. And I think what will help the preacher a lot is responding to them. If that means like laughing at their jokes, it means putting your head down, actually like looking at your Bible and taking notes. Like preachers notice that. They notice when heads go up and down and when pens are moving. And I think that encourages them when they see that. And I think that's just a way to appreciate that you're there to listen to what he has to say.
Yeah. Have you done other guest speaking engagements, I guess, during your time as an intern?
As an intern, no. Before I was an intern, I did like some stuff. Like I remember being invited back to UC Irvine, my old alma, and just speaking at WACF there. And I actually have a guest speaking arrangement coming up, and nice. Speaking at WA in UCR. End of this month.
Nice.
Actually, that reminds me. I did have one guest speaking arrangement when I was an intern. At a church retreat awesome. with some of the churches from Arizona.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
How can we be praying for you then? I guess we can pray for your upcoming guest spot, but how else can we be praying for your, I guess, candidating process?
I guess just pray that it goes. I don't know, just see it all the way through. I think I've been waiting for this for a while. The church has been waiting for this for a while, and I just pray I just graduate and I'm ready, and I get signed on. Nothing's guaranteed, so I'm just thankful for this whole process. But I think the hardest part of the process is over, like preaching and doing the pastoral and deacon interviews. The meet and greet, I don't know. I guess we'll see what that looks like. But I grew up in this church, so I think that makes things a little bit more comfortable for me because I know most people here. And so, yeah, I think it's more praying that I will continue to stay humble through this whole process. That I don't take this for granted. And even though, yes, I'm very familiar with us at FCBC, candidating is a high calling, and to remember that this is not just another step, but this is a church affirming my call to become a pastor.
Yeah. How long has this entire process been for you? Like giving the short version of your entire journey, because the seminary and getting to this point, a lot of time has passed by, but it seems like it flew by really fast.
Yeah, some people have been telling me it felt really fast. I felt like it's dragging through the mud. I think a lot of it because I first felt the call to ministry, or at least a desire to preach. I first had a desire to preach in college. This is like 10 years ago, over 10 years ago. And so,
right.
And so it's been a long time in terms of just wrestling with that desire, what to do with it. Doesn't mean I should go to ministry, or should I just use it bivocationally? And then going to seminary 4 years ago, it felt like I'm entering undergrad again because it's 4 years. I'm not a good student in the sense that like I like studying, or I like sitting in classrooms and lectures. So, and so it just felt like a long time. Yeah, I can't believe we're here.
Well, yeah, Gabe. Well, thank you for taking the time to come on Instagram and just talk to us briefly about these things. I'm excited to see what God has in store for you and for your family and for our church, of course. Thank you so much, Gabe. Thank you. And your sermon is available online. We actually just did a excerpt from your sermon. We did a transcribed excerpt. It's on our church blog, so everybody can go to what is it? fcbcwalnut.squarespace.com? Is that the new site now?
Yes.
Just go to
I think so.
fcbcwalnut.org and then click on the English site and then find our blog there. There's an excerpt of Gabe's sermon, and you can also find the video on our YouTube channel. So, Gabe, thanks for doing all of that for us and, preaching.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Aaron, for, I guess, setting all this up. You're the man behind the scenes doing all this.
No, it's fun, man. And you're also behind the scenes doing this stuff too. You edited your own transcript. So Endora helped us too, but yeah, thank you.